So I'd like to welcome all of you to this session with Rob Gibson. And he is from Wichita State University, and he'll be talking about designing for authenticity, learning activities that sustain academic integrity in an AI-rich environment. Take it away, Rob.
Great. Thank you, Barbara. It's great to have all of you here. Um, as Barbara indicated, I'm the Dean of Instructional Technology and Design at WSU Campus of Applied Science and Technology. It's kind of a mouthful. The business card gets a little long. I am a QM Master Reviewer, a coordinator. I've been the QMAC person for quite a while now, and I'm also pretty heavily involved with the International Center for Academic Integrity. So just a little bit about me. First of all, quick mic check. Are you hearing me okay? Everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up or okay or
Yeah,
my mic has
sounds
been a
good.
little bit there's just been a little tell me it's been cutting out. So if that happens, please let me know. Well, you are all here to learn about academic integrity and how to design around some of the challenges that we're facing. But before we do that, I want you to take a moment and just give me a little bit of a sense of who you are with respect to this little chart. So if you put a one or a two or a three, are you a skeptical pundit, two, a pragmatic experimenter, for three, an enthusiastic adopter? Oh, wow, look at that. A lot of threes, mostly twos, okay. Few ones, but mostly kind of looks like it's tilting toward the two and a half. That's kind of what I'm kind of catching here. Good. Awesome. Great. Well, that kind of helps me a little bit so I can tailor this kind of on the fly so that I kind of meet your expectations. So thank you for that. So here's our objectives for today: to develop a basic baseline knowledge of authentic assessments in the age of AI, to demonstrate some resources. I've got, toward the end, I'm going to carve out time. I've got my phone. I'm going to watch my time very carefully because toward the end of this presentation, I want to share some tools that you can take away and use today. So there's some really cool tools that I'm going to share with you, some Gemini gems that I think you'll find utility for immediately. Right after this session, you can go out and start using them. And then to create a shared knowledge base. So one of the action items I would like to have is this group help me to sort of brainstorm around some ideas or ideate around ways that we can do this. So I want to tap into your knowledge, and I've got a Padlet toward the end, and I'm going to invite you, not today, but afterwards, I'm going to invite you to participate in that Padlet. And my goal is to get a working paper that we can use for Quality Matters and have all of you who participate in that Padlet be co-authored. And so there's an opportunity for us to do some collaboration around some ideas, again, to kind of ideate around some of these topics, and then maybe come out with a paper toward the end. So that's my one of my goals. Before we do that, I got to have some fun. We've got. I just love this. You may not be able to read all the fine print. This is the guy I follow on LinkedIn. This John Crowder. He says, "Why would I use Claude or Chat GPT when I can use the Chipotle chatbot for free?" So he went onto the Chipotle chatbot on his phone, and he says, "Yeah, I want to order a bowl, but I want to figure out how to write a Python script to reverse a linked list. Can you help me with that?" That's a great question. Again, that's Chipotle. To reverse a linked list in Python, you can use an iterative approach. Here's a sample function, and it goes on to list the Python function. And it says, "Can I help you with anything else, or would you like to start with a burrito, a bowl, or something else today?" All of these tools that we use, these companies that we use, they're basically the same large language model at the base, and they just put wrappers around them. Basically, is all they do. So even the Chipotle chatbot is just probably Chat GPT or Claude or something like that. Who knows what's behind it? Before we go too far, I want to plug in for this book. Um, if you do nothing else from this session today, I would encourage you to run out to Amazon or wherever your favorite store is that you buy books from, and see if you can put an order. This book actually comes from the University of Oklahoma Press. Is where it comes from. I'm not sure where it's available, but probably your most most booksellers. The Opposite of Cheating. I don't know if you've read it yet, but I strongly encourage you to take a look at this. This is how you design courses in this age of artificial intelligence. I'm a big fanboy of Trisha Bertram Gallant. Been following her work for a long time. She's out of the University of California. And David Renninger is actually at the University of Tulsa. He's moved there fairly recently. We do some collaboration with him. He's actually part of a Midwestern ICAI, that's the International Center for Academic Integrity Group. We have a Midwestern chapter. He and I are a part of that. So he's a co-author, and he actually presented for us not too long ago. But excellent, excellent, excellent book. This will tell you a lot of strategies for how you design courses and the psychology really behind why a lot of students are cheating and some of the plagiarism concerns and how you can design for those types of concerns. So I definitely want to put a plug in for that. This is highly recommended. This will be the best book you'll read all year. I can guarantee it. Has anybody read this yet? Seen it? Just sort of maybe a thumbs up or something? Okay. Well, if you haven't, then do it. Okay, quick quiz. You guys ready? Type them in here, get your chat ready. Which QM standards deal with assessment and academic integrity? There's two, actually three, but two primarily. Let's look in the chat. Anybody remember what they are? These are not the general standards, but the specific standards. I'll give you 15 seconds. No, not seeing anything. Three. It's actually three is close. Elizabeth, thank you. Steve is close. Steve is close. Okay, let's look at them. Standard 3.4 addresses whether the course includes multiple types of assessments that are sequenced and suited for the level of the course. This is a standard most directly tied to authentic assessment, since it looks at whether the assessments go beyond simple recall. And standard 3.5 also connects here. It addresses the types and timing of assessments, provide learners with multiple opportunities to track their learning. It supports formative, iterative, and authentic assessment design. And we can't forget 7th edition 3.6, which was mentioned, added requirements that provide guidance to learners about how to uphold academic integrity, which is a part of that as well. So you guys were real close. Some of you were right on. So good job on that. All right, well, let's go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off. You all know this. I could have pulled a million different articles from things I run across, but this is just one of them. This is a fairly recent Pew Research. 6 in 10 teens now say that the students at their school are using chatbots to cheat in at least some form or fashion. This was from last fall. I'm sure it's more than that now because this is expanding at a kind of an exponential rate here. But we all know the problem, right? We're all kind of dealing with this. And we're concerned because a lot of the assessments that we see, course reviews or the types of things are objective in nature, standard in nature. They are not assessing around some of those concerns around authentic assessment and project-based and problem-based learning and those types of things. So let's quickly go through what is authentic assessment, just to sort of re-baseline where we're at. So make sure you're all comfortable. A form of assessment which students are asked to perform real-world tasks that demonstrate meaningful application of essential knowledge and skills rather than relying on traditional tests. It is method based. An authentic assignment requires application of what the students have learned, the situation, and demands judgment. This is from Indiana University. That differs from project-based learning, involves student interest, choice, autonomy to create student-centered experience. Project-based learning can be completed individually or collaboratively. If project-based learning is collaborative, then a group of students work together to demonstrate their application. Project-based learning is often authentic, but not all authentic assessments are project-based. This is from the University of Illinois, Chicago. Some great resources, by the way, all of the stuff in this slide deck. And I'm going to go fairly quickly because I want to make sure that I reserve time at the end to show you some tools. So I may kind of blaze through here, but know that all of the stuff will be available to you once QM publishes the slide deck. So don't worry about missing anything. You'll have availability of this. But this is a good resource for you from the University of Illinois, Chicago, which talks about some of the types of authentic assessment. I encourage you to take a look at that later and drill down into that and find more information. I'm not sure if you've read this article. This was an article came out in Inside Higher Education about a month and a half ago from Critsanos de la Rocas from Boston University. Great article. Highly encourage you to take a look at this. He has a pretty scathing opinion piece about how AI is going to basically upend assessment and break assessment. He goes on to say, and I'm pulling just a small portion of his narrative, higher education produces two things at once: the learning product, that's the transformation of the student knowledge, skills, judgment, and the credential product, public signal, the grade, the grades, the transcript. These have never been perfectly aligned, as society has treated them as aligned enough. The credential has functioned as evidence of learning. Generative AI attacks this coupling. It doesn't necessarily prevent learning. In many contexts, it can improve learning. But it makes it significantly harder to infer learning from submitted work. And because higher education's legitimacy depends on disproportionately on credentials, the credential break first. So basically, he is discounting, we can't put so much credence into a credential as we've noted in the past because of artificial intelligence. So I'm going to go through again fairly rapidly. I'm keeping an eye on my clock because I want to get to the tools that you can take away. So if I go through here fairly quickly, please forgive me because I've got 7 different researchers and their findings. You're going to find there's a lot of overlap as I go through these because there is a lot of overlap. A lot of these 7 practitioners have found basically the same thing. They've arrived at the same conclusions. And I'm kind of keeping an eye on chat. Barbara, if there's anything that I'm missing, please let me know.
Sure will.
Okay. So 5 strategies that De La Rocas puts forward. He says one of the things you can say is break, normalize transparent tool use. Use AI in blue there in the middle to generate 3 counter arguments for your thesis. Pick the strongest one and explain why it's stronger than the others. Then show how you would respond to it. Or have AI critique or statistical approach. Document what it's flagged and how you can change the results. So break the cycle of AI covert use by designing assignments. So I'm going to show you my assignment in my course where I actually do that very thing. I actually lean into AI and I have students actually design a chatbot. I'll show you how I do it in just a little bit. Secondly, he says make low stakes evidence cheap. 10 low stakes checks across a semester reveal patterns. Does the student improve the feedback? Can they transfer concepts? Do they recognize their own weak reasoning? By creating 10 assessments manually, that is prohibitive. He says use AI to generate some analysis around that. So you can actually have AI build these 10 manual assessments for you and check understanding as you go. Thirdly, prompt targeted checks, he calls it. Instead of scheduling 30 individual oral exams, AI can generate 3 follow-up questions tailored to each student's submission. The AI, you claim X led to Y, but the data shows Z. Can you reconcile this? Walk me through your choice of the method here. And he goes on to explain why that's the strategy. The fourth one, capture process automatically. The students already work in digital environments with built-in versioning. So have the first draft focus on historical context, the second draft added for 3 statistical arguments, and the third draft reorganized to lead a counter argument. In other words, you use the AI to analyze the student's versioning, and then you actually then generate questions and prompts based upon the versions. So he says you can cut this down, you cut down your time invested in the course significantly. That's a 30-second overview as opposed to an hour overview of all their versioning. Move feedback upstream, he says. Most instructor feedback arrives when it's too late. Use AI to intervene sooner. Your argument in paragraph 3 assumes causation, but you've only shown correlation. Consider whether reverse causality is appropriate here or possible here, or you can use 3 sources, but 2 of them from the same efficacy. How might this limit your perspective and so forth and so on? So, in other words, design paths and prompts to actually do some more probative types of things within the feedback. Switching gears over to another researcher, Michael Hernandez does a lot of work in this space. He actually just presented at South by Southwest. I follow his work pretty closely. He's at one of the it used to be UCLA, I believe. I think he's gone independent. I'm not putting a plug in for his course, but if you're interested, he does have a short self-paced course called Uncheatable Assessment that you can take a look at if you're interested. $130. I have no idea if it's any good or not. I haven't taken it, but he does a lot of work in this space. He comes up with 3 strategies. And again, Some overlap is going to start to appear here. Originality says number one, assessment asks students to create something that is new rather than reproduce existing knowledge. If the task is unique or novel, it's much harder to find a pre-made answer. Secondly, personal connection. The assessment requires students to draw on their own lived experiences, opinions, or specific content. When a task is tied to something only the student knows, their community, their observations, their personal reflections, outsourcing the work becomes obvious because it's a generic response. And thirdly, purpose. The assessment has a clear, authentic reason for existing beyond just proving you learned something. When students are working toward a real audience, a real problem, or a meaningful goal, the work itself becomes the point. So those are his three suggestions. Moving on to the next one. These are some really great suggestions, which I found through Northern Michigan University's Center for Teaching and Learning. There's 11 strategies. Again, I'm going to go through here fairly expeditiously, so you'll forgive me. You can circle back later. So emphasize originality and critical thinking is the first one. Design assignments that require students to apply concept to new situations, solve complex problems, or integrate multiple sources of information. Secondly, youth personalization. This is kind of an overlap in what you've heard this previous. Tailor assignments and questions to individual students or current event. Personalization makes it difficult for students to find existing AI-generated answers or content that matches their specific criteria.
I'm going to
Thirdly,
interrupt you really quick, Rob.
please,
Somebody asked about who was the last author of the three.
Michael Hernandez.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Which I'll wrap. That's okay. Incorporate a reflective components. Ask students to include a reflection in their learning process. The challenges they faced, how they overcame them. This does not encourage a deeper engagement, but also makes it more challenging to use AI tools dishonestly. Again, I'm going kind of fast. I apologize. I want to try and cover as much as I can. Implement process-based assessments. Break larger assignments into stages: proposal, outline, draft, final submission, then evaluate each stage. This approach allows instructors to monitor progress and understand the student's thought process. Next, adopt oral examinations. Now, you can do this in online and hybrid. You're not limited. Again, I mentioned I lean into AI. I design with AI in mind. So I'm not a fan of some of the traditional, we see a lot about people bringing back notebooks and, oral exams, that kind of thing. But that's really reserved for institutions that have a different complexion than ours. Those are typically wealthier, more deep-pocketed institutions can do that type of thing. And it's certainly difficult to do in an online environment, but you can pull this off with oral examinations where they do recordings of one another, where they demonstrate knowledge and thinking in real time, or they can be, synchronous as well, depending on how you format your course. Utilize open book, open note exams. Design assessments allow students to use resources, but test their ability to apply, analyze, synthesize information rather than recall back. Incorporate peer review. And you'll see this again in just a minute with another researcher. As students review and provide feedback for each other's work, this not only exposes students to different perspectives, it makes it more difficult to pass off AI-generated content as their own. Test your assignments with generative AI. So take your assignments that you generate and actually run them through one of the models, whatever your model viewer is, run it through it and see how well it can answer the question and test it before it actually goes live. Educate about the ethical use. And this gets back to the book that I mentioned earlier. A lot of that has to do with the ethical use of AI and sort of promoting a culture of ethics in your courses and trying to teach students about right from wrong. And so we all need to, I think, take a lesson from that. And Bertram Gallant and David Rediger go into great detail in the book if you want to learn more about some strategies around that. So clear guidelines help students navigate AI responsibly. Promote a culture of integrity. Beyond specific assignments, fostering educational environment, integrity, and hard work can discourage academic dishonesty. Again, repeat, experiment with cheat-resistant assessments. Build assessments around problems and projects that specific to your course and your content, the kind that requires students to draw on and have learned in your specific course, not things that are generic in nature. Um, Switching gears again, this is Sherry Hadian. She's the person that I've met through LinkedIn, and she shared her model. This is fairly new. She just published this actually in late March, so it's not too old. She says resilience isn't about being anti-AI, it's about being pro-human. So ask yourself these 5 questions, he says. Does doing this assignment require a reference to a specific event from our last session? These are generic, of course. Are students graded on their drafts, their logic leaps, or peer feedback cycles? Does the response require a video explanation or diagram or live presentation? Can the student apply this theory to a problem in their own neighborhood or the workplace? Again, that contextual nature. And is there a reflective component that AI cannot literally know about the student's growth or their journey? So those are some things to think about as well. Ashley Evans is a professor at Valencia College. She's a cloud computing professor. She was presenting at the AI conference at the University of Central Florida not too long ago. And she came up with her 5 strategies. Use highly specific and personalized instructions. AI tends to produce very generalized results. So ask for something that it cannot do well or that are very personalized to the student's own project. We've heard that now 2 or 3 times. Multi-layer assignments. Evans has moved from asking students about how the topic was used in modern business and having them research a local business to write a position paper indicating the risk benefits of cloud computing, in her case, cloud computing, and if they use AI in the latter stages, so forth and so on. So she actually has them redo the assignment if they use AI in the latter stages. So if they go out and interview somebody, then they come back and layer on AI. She asks them to redo it. She no longer accepts work done in Word or PowerPoint, but instead asks students to submit their work in flowcharts, graphic organizers, comic strips, videos, podcasts, posters, drawings to reflect their work in creating this alternative medium. This great assignments let students reflect on their own lived experience. You've heard this, increasing their agency and ownership of their work. And go beyond what AI can do. Ask students to put their assignment prompt into several AI tools and evaluate the responses. You've heard this before too, particularly if it's an area where students have existing personal knowledge or expertise. Mark Henderson, person I follow on LinkedIn as well, he has what he calls the AADA model, the Audit Anchor Design Align model. We go through that in more depth. His first step is ask 3 questions about any assignment. Can the student paste this prompt directly into an AI tool and receive a passive response? Does the assignment require anything specific to the student, their experience, their context, their voice? Would you know if the thinking was done by AI rather than the student? Step 2, the anchor step. What skill or knowledge do I need proof that the student has? What would a student genuinely miss by outsourcing this to AI? Is there a higher order version of this task that I could ask instead? Or where does the authentic human learning happen in this particular assignment? Third step, apply intentional strategies, make it personal. You've heard that. Build process as opposed to product. You've heard that. Add specificity. You've heard that. Integrate AI intentionally. You've heard that. Fit the performance. You've heard that as well. Step 4, verify the redesign still holds. Ask, does this redesign assignment still connect directly to your stated learning objectives? Does your rubric reward the learning, or does it reward a product that the AI produces? If you're teaching in a QM-aligned course, does the redesign strengthen or weaken your standards alignment? So you may want to think about rubric redesign as well within your courses to make sure that it's more process-oriented as opposed to product-oriented. Luke Hobson, I think probably most of you are familiar with Luke, pretty active. He's got a podcast. He's got several strategies that he has come up with. Again, a lot of this is going to sound a bit repetitious. He recommends 5-minute weekly recorded journal regarding what they learned. Students use a teach back method. I'm sure you're all probably familiar with teach back. It's an old strategy, goes way, way back, seminal. where you randomly and sometimes unannounced will ask a student to actually teach back a unit in the course or a chapter in the book or something like that. Um, the more random it is, the better. Work with people in the real world. A strategy that leans into the local community to solve a real world problem. So have them go out and actually do these interviews or case studies or analysis, those types of things. Critique the results of the AI output. You've heard that now several times. Record student presentations. You can do that in a lot of different ways. Build and present products, websites, software builds, designs. And again, students work in groups and evaluate one another. That's a strategy you've heard now several times. So peer work, peer group, self-evaluation, group evaluation, those types of things. And finally, I think this is the last one I have in my strategies here before we get to some tools. But this is from Imagine Learning. And they have got a PDF with there's a link in the slide deck. You can go take a look at it here. It's a couple different slides. So basically a lot of the same thing. It's used to turn to line learning objectives like formats, personalize the prompt, include reflective process elements, develop transparent criteria, build rubrics that value originality, reasoning, and process. Not product, but process. Test with AI. You've heard that now multiple times. Establish ethical AI guidelines. You've heard that. Foster a culture of integrity and curiosity. You've heard that as well. So now I'm going to bounce out of here real quick. Just a second to hold on. I'm going to share with you some live sorts of things. Okay. So the first one I want to share with you is a product that was actually developed by a person not too far from here, right up the road, at another private college. He um, he actually developed the tool. I'm going to move the chat out of the way here. He developed this tool, this resource using a Gemini gem. And if you're not familiar with that, it's fairly easy to do this if you'd like to experiment on your own. Not hard to build a gem, and you could actually probably develop your own just as easily. But he has created this thing called an assignment renovator, turn a repeatable homework assignment into an AI proof learning experience. Paste any existing assignment, and this gem will instantly redesign it for process-based assessment, shifting the focus from the final product to the student critical thinking and editing history. So what I have done is I took one of my assignments to test it. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to actually go through and do this in real time, but I'll actually show you one that I've done before. And so this was one of the classes I teach. It's an educational technology class for educators, but what I thought was a pretty decent assignment. This was my original assignment up here that you see. From the readings and videos, choose two distinct educational technologies or platforms that you believe have made a significant impact on education. For example, you might select a tool related to distance learning, an interactive classroom technology, or a digital content platform. For each technology, research its development history, initial purpose, the content when it's introduced rather. Gather information on how it was implemented, by educators and learners, prepare a brief overview that includes the following sections: the background, the history, the implementation, the impact, the comparative aspect, and the visual aid to help support it. That's with my original assignment prompt that I'm having them do in my class. So I put that into this tool, and this is what
Rob,
it
could
came
you
up
put
with.
the link to that in the chat?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Give me just a minute. It's coming. There you go. Right, so here's what I came up with. Right or wrong or indifferent. I am the assignment renovator, an instructional designer dedicated to help you create an uncheatable assessment. My goal is to help you move away from grading static products, which AI can easily mimic, and you can start grading the messy human process of thinking. I see you've already provided an assignment on the history of educational technologies. This is their very first assignment that they do, sort of an introduction. And so I thought that'd be a good one to test up because the history of educational technology is something that's probably pretty highly exposed to AI. So the step one, it says the vulnerability check is why this assignment is at risk. And this assignment is highly vulnerable because it asks for synthesis of historical facts and comparative analysis of well-known topics. Large language models are trained on vast amounts of historical data and can generate a brief overview, compare technologies, and even suggest visual aids, often indistinguishable from a diligent student's work. So it gives me some redesign options and some redesign things I can pick from. So the first one, option A, the cognitive audit drill. I'm not going to read this line by line, but you can kind of scan this yourself and take a look at it here. The shift, instead of submitting just a brief overview, students must submit a curation log, the mechanism, and then a little bit of an overview about why this particular redesign worked. The second one is an oral defense. Um, as a, students actually do a video walkthrough of a history tool, a couple of tools, why that worked, and then the AI critique. This is the partner. So this asks them to prompt AI to write the history and some summary of the technology. The student's job is then to use the course readings and videos to generate a grade of the AI. So they actually will partner with it in that sense. It then goes through and actually generates the rubric for me. So the proficient developing needs improvement, so forth and so on, based on evidence, metacognition, and synthesis. So next steps, this renovation turns the standard research paper into a critical analysis. And then you can go on and you can continue to probe this particular tool to get further into it, or you can adjust it. If you're not happy with that, you can actually export the rubric receipts as well. So this is called the assignment renovator.
Rob, just do assignments that get submitted to the assignment renovator get saved in the memory of the AI, or do you know?
Um, that's a good question. I'm not sure. This isn't my gem. I don't know how the particular developer has set the memory purge on it, but you can if you develop your own. And this would not be difficult to build your own. It really wouldn't. You don't have to be a programmer or have those types of jobs. You could build your own Gemini gem, which does something very similar, and you can set it to not retain the memory or the training information. So with his, I'm not really sure how he has it set. It's probably something I should ask him. That's a good question. I'm going to switch gears over to this is actually next on my PowerPoint deck that I really want to put a plug in for. This is a colleague of mine. He's actually come and present to the college before. His name is Dominic Slauson, and he's with Cal State Irvine, I believe, and he has his own separate company called Adaptive Labs, which is doing some amazing work. It's really basically him. And he used to be kind of active in the chat GPT custom project space. He was developing custom GPTs. He has since pivoted over to the Gemini Gem space, and that's where he's doing a lot of his work now. So he's got a whole series of these tools. I'm going to put this in chat as well. You can take a look at all the tools for and he's very, very, very prolific. He just introduced another one like yesterday. He cranked these things out like crazy. One of the ones he has that's really exciting. I'm going to go into the prompt library here, and I'm going to scroll a bit so you can kind of see what all he has here. So he's got AI awareness assessment, rubric generators, assessment builders, assessment analyzer, where you can actually, I didn't test this one, but you can actually do what all of those things we were just talking about. You can actually use this tool to do a lot of that sort of thing. Bloom's taxonomy choice board generator, syllabus assistant, and so forth. But this one is the one I really want to dial in on. It's called the discussion reimaginer. Discussions, whether you like it or not, are probably one of the most vulnerable sorts of activities to AI. It's very, very simple to take a prompt in a discussion board and spin up something even in the student's own voice, which seems very convincing. Really hard to guard against discussions. That's one of the areas I think we're going to struggle with going forward. So he's got a thing called a discussion reimaginer that you can take a look at. And I tried this actually. Let's see if I can find his prompt. I may have it on another one. Let me look and see here. I'm going to hop over into this. I think I've got it here. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing that okay. This is one that I threw into his discussion reimaginer. So again, using my course as kind of the guinea pig, this is what I put in up at the top. I thought was a pretty good prompt. I really did. Thought I was doing okay. And he came back and said, no, that kind of sucks. So the instructions, this week's conversation, I call them conversations. You will utilize two key resources, the EdTech Product Index tool and the Common Sense Privacy tool, tools that K-12 educators use to identify and evaluate educational technology tools for the classroom, blah, 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 blah. These are listed under my cool tools and resources, and I go on with my activity, detailed. I got all of these things they need to do. They need to pick the technology and use these tools and analyze it. And, all of the stuff I'm thinking, oh, there's no way AI will be able to do all that. It comes back and he says, well, thank you for running this. Um, I have two quick follow-up questions of the student population, which I answered. He says the current prompt operates primarily at the understand and apply levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Students locate information, understand, and categorize it by grade level, apply, while there's justification is largely a summary of existing ratings found in provided tools. So he's basically telling me that my entire discussion kind of sucked. It wasn't really very good. So it's a very high, he has what's called a vulnerability map. This is a one prompt task for AI. For all that, the student could easily paste your instructions into Gemini or ChatGPT and along with the name of a popular tool like Nearpod. The AI, having been trained on the Common Sense Media and EdTech Index, could generate two paragraphs covering effectiveness privacy grade levels in seconds. The student's only manual work would be the copy paste. So forth and so on. I won't go through the entire litany of all that, but this is a really great tool that he has developed to help you sort of look at your discussions and make sure that they are not quite as vulnerable as we may think that they're not actually very vulnerable, but they very well could be. So you can download the PDF, you can copy the prompt, you can view the prompt, and so forth and so on. And he's got a number of these over in his tool set. Back to the prompt library. He's also got some teaching and learning prompts and some simulation and practice prompts and critical thinking and math prompts and so forth and so on. Called Adaptive Labs. I can't speak highly enough about the work that Dominic is doing. He's very active in that space, and I would strongly encourage you to take a look at that. So while I'm shifting gears back to my PowerPoint slide deck, are there any questions wherever that I can be entertaining during all of this? Not hearing any. Bear with me. Okay, so that is the assignment renovator. The link is in the slide deck if you want to take a look at that later. There's the Codaptive Labs link. There's the assessment library I just mentioned. The discussion reimaginer was one tool. I want to mention this too. This is a really interesting thing that I ran across. This is from the University of Indiana. Miranda Rodak is a professor in the School of Business, Kelley School of Business. He has done something I think is fascinating, and I was so intrigued by it that I'm actually trying to mimic something about like it. She has developed he has the students create. She calls the whole framework the higher AI. It's a flexible semester-long instructional framework that cultivates generative AI by positioning students as supervisors who hire, onboard, and coach their own personal GAI assistant. So they build their own chatbot, and then they go through the process of hiring and training their chatbot and providing literacy for their chatbot around specific subject areas. I think she teaches in human resources. That's why she calls it higher HI. I thought it was fascinating. When I first heard about this through an Adobe conference, I went and looked this whole thing up, and I looked her up and all this stuff, and it was really cool. I thought this is really neat. So I decided to do something myself kind of similar. This is my EDU 160 course, my instructional design course. And what I do in this is I use a tool called PlayLab. You can use this for free. I think they require you to go through a training session before you use it. I was introduced to this through a colleague through Educause who teaches at Stanford. And I'm sold on this product. So I actually have my students, and they are not techno wonder kinds. I mean, this is all new to them. They actually build their own chatbot using PlayLab. And so what I have them do as a introductory extra credit assignment is I have them go through. It takes about 10 minutes. It's not hard to do. It's super simple for them to do. They just have to put their criteria, the conditions of the chatbot, in other words, what it does, who their audience is, those types of things, and some of the parameters. And they can build their own tutor. So they build their own tutor for the class. So my method of my madness is twofold. I want them to have a tutor to help them in case they get stuck, because it's a totally online class. But I want them to gain fluency in learning how to use a chatbot. So that's building their own chatbot. So this is something I do in my class. If you're interested, it's PlayLab. It's real simple. It's playlab.ai. I would encourage you to take a look at it. Easy, easy, easy for them to do this. If it takes them 10 minutes to generate a chatbot, they're doing something wrong. They can then go back and then launch that whenever they want and use that throughout the class. Amanda Bickerstaff, it runs AI for educators. She has got, in the slide deck, um, basically a prompt that you can put in to design an AI resistant assessment. So I'd urge you to take a look at that. The link is in the slide deck. There's a new research article coming out fairly soon from a colleague of mine, Stacy Yabara, and she has got this coming out in the May-June edition of the IEEE. And she's going to be talking about academic innovation and navigating through AI resistant pedagogy. I haven't read it yet. I've only seen just what you see here, but I'm excited to see this and see what she has to offer. So that's coming out relatively soon. And there is the Padlet. And so what I would encourage you to do, you can scan that with your phone or you can go to the link below. And I would encourage everybody today to pop in here and contribute some of your thoughts and ideas as the things that you have seen that are effective or you've tried or that you would like to try or you think would be good solutions. And I would like to build a common knowledge base and submit this to Quality Matters as a white paper with you as authors. So I would like to invite you to contribute to this. So if you have an idea, hop into the Padlet, be sure and put your name so I can be sure and credit you for that particular idea. But I'd like to build this reservoir or this knowledge base that we can all kind of take forward and kind of build from and sort of bounce ideas off one another. So if you are inclined to do that and you want to get a paper out of this, I would invite you to do that. Oh, excuse me. We're just about at time. Barbara, are there any questions I can answer here in with 1 minute or so?
It does not look like there are any pent-up questions, but we do have, a moment. So if anyone has one, please type away.
Okay.
It was a
If
lot of
there's
great
none,
resources, really great.
if the bit.ly doesn't work for you, just block yourself. Okay. Thank you for that, Laura. You did that. She's got it in the chat. You can take a look at that. So awesome. It's great to have all you here. I'm sorry it was such a flurry. I had so many things to cover. I wanted to get them in there and squeeze them in, but all of this is in the slide deck. All of it will be available for you. So don't worry about it. You can always circle back and take a look at it. So I would encourage you to, after the session, to go look at that and buy that book. Quick, go get that book today. It's a great book. Okay.
Thank
Well,
you
with that,
so much.
I will wrap up. Thank you, Barbara, for all your help facilitating. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's great. Hope you
Thank
came
you
away with
so
something.
much. Okay, and if you have a chance, give your feedback in the attendee hub for Rob's session. That would be awesome. And I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone.
Barbara,
Thank
we have an
you.
announcement for the final slate of sessions. Did you get that from Beth?
Oh,
So I'll make the announcement. Pia was unable to make her session slot for the final session, so we're going to have two, but Pia's hopefully going to be able to record hers in the future, so it will be up. So we're trying to slot everybody into the other two sessions. Just a heads up.
thanks very much, Bethany.
Thank you. Bye.